I'm Shauna Rappaport, Vice President and Executive Director of Verge with GreenBiz Group, and I am here in GreenBiz Studio with Molly Wood, who is the host of Marketplace Tech from American Public Media. Molly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Shauna.
You're usually in the interviewer role.
This is weird.
So this is a fun opportunity, and you sit in such a unique position in the landscape of getting just such an expansive view in the world of technology, economics, sustainability. We're here at Circularity and focusing on circular economy. Talk a little bit about what you're tracking in that space and what's most energizing to you personally these days.
So this is, after 20 years covering technology and the business of technology, this is a very unexpected place for me to be. And it's happening because we just launched a series looking at how technology can help us adapt to climate change. We call it How We Survive. And I think it's a really, and the circularity part of this conference is so interesting to me because what we're looking at is resilience, and we're looking at decentralization, and we're looking at technology solutions to make people more adaptable and literally to help people survive the worst effects of climate change and extreme weather. And so it's been fascinating for me to hear how almost every part of the conversations here, even though they may start with sustainability, they may stop at mitigation, ultimately come down to something that could be used to help us adapt to the changing world that we live in.
And what are the ways in which you see the circular economy specifically as an enabler of resilience and adaptation?
I think the economy part is what is so important, and getting that holistic thinking. And because I think that, in my brief experience, it seems that the climate community can be really split into, some people are talking about sustainability and renewables. Some people are talking about mitigation. Fewer, but a growing number of people are talking about adaptation. And the idea of rolling all of those efforts into one and spending money on adaptation, which will lead to mitigation because you will have a cleaner environment, you will have a cleaner business operation. And sort of seeing how all of those, so taking the circularity idea to kind of the meta level and seeing how all of those things can work together is super interesting to me.
Well, I can't wait to check out the show. Let's talk about how we talk about things for a minute, because you have such an important voice in both speaking to the general public and also the business community. When it comes to sort of sustainability, technology, the intersection of the two, what are you finding are some of the most effective ways? Let's take the general public first. Like, how do we really get people engaged in some of these key issues?
Yeah, it's so interesting because I come at this as a member of the general public who has not been an expert in this. I'm an expert in technology and business. And what I'm finding is that people are responding to the idea of solutions. And in fact, I interviewed several climate scientists, one of whom said, look, I can write 7 more, he's been one of the authors of the IPCC reports talking about how serious warming is. And he said, look, I could write 7 more of these, and the trajectory is going to be the same. And it is time for all of us to sort of roll up our sleeves and get to work and show people what we can do. And that might be, in his case, they're building a resilient block of Oakland. They're taking one single city block in Oakland and saying, how can we decentralize it? How can we make it less susceptible to power outages? Doing that work on the ground. And frankly, people want that. Like, we're so tired of having kind of the fear-based conversation and the conversation that feels like we can't participate because the problem is so big that we cannot possibly hope to even carve off a tiny chunk of it. That I think as soon as and no one's trying to pretend that these are solutions at the scale that we have to tackle this problem at, but it still is hopeful, and it still feels like something that people can really grab onto in a concrete way.
Well, and that's what I was coming up for me is, like, as a storyteller, what you come across so many different stories, and what are you finding are some of the most effective ways of telling those stories, kind of a layer deeper beyond just being solutions focused. Is there anything that you'd offer around that?
For me, it's always, no matter what, and especially this is a huge challenge covering technology, right? It's all stories about people, and we have to be talking to the people, whether those people are the climate scientist who says, my part of this story is done, and I'm turning it over to the engineers, and I'm going to get in the trenches and do the work. Or, we've interviewed startup CEOs who are just the same as any startup CEO. They've just got a PowerPoint and a dream and a technology idea that they hope will really save lives and really make a difference. And then, the human beings who are saying, look, I'm going to start an equity fund. I'm going to start a hedge fund that's going to invest in in adaptation technology because I think it is both a huge business opportunity and a moral imperative.
Yeah.
And hearing them kind of balance those two forces in their own minds and kind of say, like, what kind of person am I if it seems like I'm a profiteer as a result of this? And I think as soon as we get to that human level, as soon as we try to understand these stories from the perspective of like you and me living them every day, they just land better.
Well, and that's where it all translates to, right? What we're finding about climate science and communication is like people get engaged where it connects to them personally. And the human piece, whether it's the technologies or the policies or the financing mechanisms, how that's actually translating and improving people's lives is so important. I want to close with a final sort of personal question for you, which is what is your personal motivation in all of this? Like what was if there was a moment or a series of experiences that got you on this path?
Yeah. Okay, well, this is kind of a funny story. I have this hairdresser, and he's amazing. He owns his salon, and he cuts the hair of all of these like phenomenal women in Berkeley. Like just, like Laura Tyson, the former like Clinton Economic Council, like all these awesome, I'm like his lamest client. But he cuts the hair of a woman who's a climate scientist at UC Berkeley who was one of the recipients of the Nobel Prize for the science behind inconvenient truth. And she's the one who said, my part in this story is done. We are at the point has tipped, if you will. Like whether it's 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees or 3 degrees, like we're going to see the effects of extreme climate change. And she said, and this was the sentence that sent me on this path, the only way forward now is engineering. And I thought, okay, that makes it my story. Because as one of those consumers who hears about climate change all the time, who hears about efforts towards sustainability and renewable energy, like it didn't come home to me. It didn't make sense to me, and it didn't feel like a thing I could grab onto, and it felt like a problem that was so huge that my little compost bin was not making a dent. And it was so great for me to feel like this was a story that I could take on from within my beat to make it a technology story, a money story, and a story of inspiration, and just have it be really impactful. And it's probably the thing that I'm doing right now in my career that I'm the most proud of.
Oh, well, that is such a beautiful story. Thank you for embracing that as an invitation, for stepping up and stepping in. You're an inspiration to us all. It's so fantastic to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Shauna.
Molly Wood from Marketplace Tech.